My name is Kotwal. I am a mechanical engineer. I retired from Larsen & Toubro as a president, heavy engineering, and director on the board in August 2015, and have been settled in Pune since that time. My first interaction or really exposure to theory of constraints was in a very brief half-day seminar which I attended in Mumbai many years back. And that was the first time I actually saw on screen that time Mr. Goldratt explaining his vision and his theory of constraints in a very, very effective way. I was quite impressed. I went back to Hazira where we were setting up a modern heavy fabrication facility. That was a facility for manufacture of large equipment for nuclear, defense, aerospace, and of course, very large fertilizer and petrochemical equipment. So when we were looking at one of the projects there, we recently received an order where there was a massive challenge because we were asked to reduce the manufacturing cycle time by something like 20-25% over something which we were traditionally used to doing. So this is something which it struck me that what I'd heard about the theory of constraints and its application, I decided to really try it out. I therefore read the book, The Goal, and of course I took my team on stream and then asked them to read the book. We had an interesting discussion after that and decided to implement it on that project. Of course, without any consultancy of any kind, doing it on our own, but that I think was formed a good foundation. And I mean, at the end of it, we were extremely successful in delivering the project on time and making a full bonus which was available on that project. This gave us a lot of confidence. Later on, when I went back to Mumbai, the earlier plant, and then took over the entire division, this was always on my mind that we can make a drastic difference in the way we handle projects. And typically in heavy engineering, we have about 400 projects going on simultaneously, all suited to different customer priorities. And since we were not a batch production kind of a company, we were making only custom made equipment. So every equipment is different, customer is different, and I thought this was an ideal opportunity. And that is when we first engaged some consultant. That was, of course, not very successful in the first attempt. But then later on, we decided to take it up directly with Mr. Goldratt himself. We had an occasion to meet him. And really that churned up the entire way we were looking at projects. So that's when we really started implementing in a big way. And of course, then I sort of implemented this approach throughout the division and later on in shipbuilding and also some interesting projects which came along. So what we really found is that the entire way we were looking at projects in a conventional mode needed a complete change. And this was enabled by this theory of constraints, which I found attractive because personally I'm against a lot of this management jargon. So I found it quite simple to implement and to explain to people. Later on, when we were engaged in a very highly classified project for defense, we decided to implement it in a big way there. And since, of course, it was classified, we could not talk much about it, but I can tell you that we had remarkable results. We implemented things like the full kit. And for another project which we set up, in fact, a separate plant which we put up for manufacture of missiles, there we used Symphony as the software. Whereas in the other case, we employed Concerto. Now using this, we got some remarkable results. And the next part is I got an opportunity to set up a very major multi-million-dollar facility for manufacture of heavy forgings for the nuclear industry, right from melting of steel to manufacturing finished ingots up to 300 tons a piece and then forging them into cylinders. This was a very challenging project, one of a kind, and had to be put up in good time. And that's where we again employed the TOC principles, but this time right starting from the construction itself, the digging of the ground, foundations, and so on. So it was a completely different application, but I found it extremely interesting and useful to employ the basic principles of TOC. Subsequent to that, we put up another very major shipyard in the south of India, which is in fact, today India's most modern defense shipyard. And that is something where, again, to monitor the progress of the shipyard, I use the theory of constraints and the principles which Dr. Eli Goldratt had explained to us. I recollect with pleasure the 3 or 4 meetings that I had with Mr. Goldratt. Every meeting was a very kind of an educative one, because it opened one's eyes. I mean, he had that unique ability to think laterally. And in fact, that's why I often say that he was one of the most intelligent people I've ever come across in my long corporate career. Now, when we set up that project, we had to engage with a lot of activities, civil construction, and the entire scope of buildings, and then putting up the electricals and all that. But we found this technique quite useful in separating the wheat from the chaff, as they say. So I must say that I actually have been thoroughly impressed with the kind of the achievements that we have had. But more importantly, I've always felt that it's got a huge potential, the application of principles laid down by Dr. Goldratt. And ever since, I have become quite a fan of the entire process. And every occasion that I have of meeting industry people, I do talk about it and explain the good points. So I have a great regard for, of course, the late Dr. Goldratt, and I'm happy to see that Rami is carrying forward this legacy very effectively. And I wish the entire organization quite well, because this is something which I feel can make a significant difference in the way projects are handled, especially the ones with a lot of uncertainty. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I wish your organization all well. Thank you.